Welcome to Quick Theological Thoughts. I'm Howard Fisher, and in this podcast I want to interact with a conversation between Chris Williamson, his podcast, and Eric Weinstein, however you pronounce it. The interview with him at this point in the interview, they talk about why the modern world is wrong about religion. But Chris Williamson actually makes a statement about faith. And so let's just dive into it and we'll interact with it as we go.
There's a way in which religious music is incredibly powerful, and prayer is incredibly powerful. And I think we're afraid to pray. You know, you say this in terms of meditation. We're afraid to submit to something bigger than ourselves, to use the programming that we have.
Okay, so these guys are basically atheists or naturalistic materialists, or whatever you want to call themselves. He actually calls himself an atheist of some sort. And listen to the language that he's using. This is an atheist who recognizes that the world is full of religion. What are we going to do about it? He's attempting to be honest with the things that are actually happening around him.
That makes us feel.
There's something that feels disingenuous about praying if you don't believe.
That's the question or the statement I want to interact with. So let's hear the rest of this.
There's a line from Dan Brown's Angels and Demons, the movie. Tom Hanks is speaking to the Camerlengo, and he's trying to get access to the Vatican archives. He wants to get down there to work out some secret that was left that he needs to find out who's killing everybody. The Camerlengo asks him, played by Ewan McGregor, he says, "Do you believe, Professor?" And he starts giving some politician's answer where he skirts around the question. He says, "I didn't ask that. I asked if you believed." He looks him straight in the eyes and he says, "Faith is a gift that I'm yet to be given."
So there's that part. So I remember saying things like this and hearing things like this before I was Christian and after became a Christian. And so it's something that we as Christians have to think about. This is not something that's light. This is something that we have to think through, that we need to be prepared to interact with on some level, or at least be willing to interact with it, right? Just talk about it, because the world around us is trying to figure out how to be consistent. We as Christians are trying to figure out how to be consistent with a culture that's not Christian. Do we just let it burn to the ground, or do we do something, right? There's a movement called Christian nationalism that's trying to go in one direction to try to answer some of this. And then there are others who are saying, let it burn to the ground. Let the culture around us burn to the ground, and then we'll pick up the pieces afterwards. Is there a balance to it? Is it an either or? It's something that we need to discuss. But listen to Eric's response to this.
I don't believe it. We all have the gift of faith. What we don't have is the ability to sustain it. We don't have the ability to import it into all quadrants of our minds. Look, I'm saying that I'm an atheist. I don't believe in the stories about the deity. But that's not constant.
Okay, so he doesn't believe in the stories about the deity, but that's not constant. We all have faith. We just can't maintain it, because what he's doing is he's recognizing that no matter how much he's probably tried to believe in God, he just can't. He doesn't have the strength within himself. Chris Williamson is basically saying, I don't have it. I've looked at religion and I've experienced this. I know what he's talking about. And I even remember saying to myself at one point, if Christianity is not true, and I don't believe it is, I just kind of gave up. I'm not going to tell Christians that it's not true anymore. Because I knew it was true. deep down. I knew there had to be a truth to it, but I didn't have that belief. And I had those fundamentalist Baptist friends who knew that they knew that they knew. And I didn't. And I couldn't do it. And so I felt it was disingenuous of myself to try to believe. I did not want to try to fake it till I make it. I didn't want to go to church anymore. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion. Was that helpful? No. I want to come back to that point here as we go through the next clip I want to play for you.
You know the song Crossroads by Robert Johnson?
Nope.
Well, I can't.
Let's see if you do.
I don't know that I could do a Robert Johnson, it would be country blue, but like if this were an electric guitar, you probably know.
We'll skip ahead.
I went down to the crossroads, tried to flag myself around. Went down the crossroads, tried to flag myself around. All good people, they just passed me by. He's talking about going to the crossroads to bargain for his soul. He wants to learn how to play the guitar. And that's powerful because you have this myth, you know, the devil goes down to Georgia, or you go to the crossroads to gain something in a Faustian bargain. How are you going to believe that with no Lord?
Right. Now, he obviously believes that these are myths, but he recognizes that there's a world that does this, right? In our realities, that there's a truth to the story, and even this truth to the story, how can it be? Now, he's an atheist, and he's trying to hold together in a non-compartmentalized psychotic way, right? He's trying to actually be honest that there's all this stuff in front of him, but the problem is that he's a naturalistic materialist, and those presuppositions that he is living in, because he doesn't want to be superstitious, right? Religion can be superstition. Or superstitious, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with superstition. So, but yet, what do we do with all this, right? What you're going to see here is that Christianity is esoteric. Religion itself is esoteric. It's all esoteric. And so, which way do we go? You know, do we embrace religion on some level? How do we do it? How do we incorporate it into our lives? These people, including, I think it was Richard Dawkins, I kind of wish we had some of the Christianity back now. Basically is what he's saying, right?
You're going to screw yourself out of the ability to listen to folklore, to mythology, to great literature. And that makes me sad.
Okay. Why? So if we don't embrace religion on some level, then we can't hear what's happening all around us. It's how we're built. It's built in. You know, he cites, music. He cites how we have all these things that are built into our culture. Let's go to the next clip because I think that might help out here.
You know, these are incredibly powerful references that we live with.
References meaning he cites many tekel from the book of Daniel. The hand went up on the wall, and you have been writes on the wall. You have been found wanting. Right? You are coming under judgment. And so we have the saying, the handwriting's on the wall. Well, where does that come from? The Bible, right? There's all these things that come from the Bible.
You know, you think about the birds. To everything, turn. It's Peter Seeger's song. There is a season and a time and a purpose under heaven. It's Ecclesiastes. You think about Jimi Hendrix going off about 2 riders were approaching and the wind began to howl. That's Isaiah. Where are you? Where are you with the power of the word? Are you afraid to welcome it in? Are you worried that you'll lose your atheism?
For him, shouldn't worry about it at all. These things can be true in a mythological sense, and we can remain atheists. But are you afraid of losing your atheism? Why? Because for him, religion is esoteric, and if we embrace the esoteric on its grounds, what then?
What are those 2 riders approaching? They come with news. That's the fall of Babylon. Who are the joker and the thief in that song? I believe they're on either side of Christ, being crucified. Religion is interested in you whether or not you give a shit. It knows about you, and it finds its way into every aspect of your life. And if you're going to be an honest atheist, you have to admit that.
All right, so if you're going to be honest, you have to admit that. So for him, he's trying to reconcile these things together. And that's the problem, is that he has presuppositions and a worldview that can't do it. And so what they're doing, and my understanding anyway, is that they're making religion esoteric, and they've lost the balance, right? So they themselves want to be in the physical world without superstition, while at the same time recognizing there's an esoteric part of all this esoteric knowledge, esoteric religion, esoteric whatever, it's out here that we have to try to, that influences our physical world, whether we want to admit it or not. So God invades our world one way or the other, right? Religion is invading your world, whether it doesn't give a crap about what you think, it's coming in. It just does. But I would submit to you, it does so for different reasons. What he's doing is he's rejecting the God of the Bible. He's embracing a form of idolatry that is still problematic. So the God of the Bible is transcendent. He is holy. He is out there, but he does not make himself known esoterically, right? God is also immanent with his creation. God holds all the atoms together. He holds the nucleus of the family together. He holds the law that holds the world together, the gravity, all of it, the ability to have knowledge, reason, understanding, logic, ethics, all of that has to be held together immanently by God himself. And we see this, but we're always swinging to one extreme. Well, it's esoteric, God's way out there, or some form of pantheism. God is the creation itself. And the truth is, God is transcendent and immanent at the same time. And the ultimate expression of that for us to be able to see, not that we understand it in depth, but for us to be able to see and believe, it's in the incarnation itself. Jesus is both God and man in his person. He walked among us. He was born of a woman. He grew up as a child. He grew in his wisdom and knowledge and understanding of the world. He ultimately was, he had to sleep, he had to eat, he had to go, find food. He had to do all of these things as we do. And he died on a cross. A physical man with a physical body dying on a physical tree, nailed to it, right? So this is all real. And when God speaks to us, he's not speaking to us esoterically, whatever that means. He's speaking to us through the creation and ultimately in the person of the Son of God himself, so that when Jesus speaks, you're hearing the very voice of God. When you read the scriptures, you hear the very voice of God. I want to get back to the original statement. Disingenuine if you don't exercise faith. I've raised 3 children, and they've all come to know the Lord. I did not raise them in such a way as, they were over there, I let them do their thing, and hopefully they see God. I didn't do that. I raised them according to what God has told me to do, how God told me to do it, the best I could. And I'm sure I fell flat in many, many different ways. But I'm attempting to live according to the Scriptures. So I raised them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Took them to church. I taught them the Scriptures. I taught them what the books of the Bible were, taught them what they said, taught them about who Jesus is, what he's done for us. He died on the cross, taught them about the law, taught them about the gospel and the good news, the coming of the kingdom, taught them all of these things. And in some sense, I restrained their evil behavior, right? If they were to do something wrong, I would restrain them, right? I don't want them to live such a life that they end up in prison. But I don't want to be so domineering that they end up rejecting God, because that's just Dad's faith and he's just forcing it on us, right? So there's that balance. It's not easy, finding that balance. And so when Chris Williamson says, I just find it disingenuous to try to believe when I don't actually believe. And Eric's point is, it's all around you. You can't not believe in it. You can't. But Eric goes on to say that I just don't have this gift. Faith is a gift, right? Well, that's true. True saving faith is a supernatural, divinely given faith. But how, is it given to us esoterically? Does it just get beamed at us? No. We should go to church. We should submit ourselves to the point where we're hearing what God has to say, whether we have the faith or not. We have to. Our public schools are a demonstration of the failure of trying to live a life that's, we don't want to be disingenuous, trying to live a life that's consistent with our atheism. And it's our secularism is causing us to, we can't even answer the question of what is a woman. I have bright, intelligent friends who have, white collar jobs, lawyers, doctors, and whatnot. Can't answer the question, what is a woman? Really? Really? Is this what we've come to? So we send our kids to schools that don't teach God's law, where Jesus Christ is not Lord, and look what we're getting back. We invested 20 years ago into a system. We put our children to the system, and what we're getting out is not what we bargained for. The investment has been lost. Disingenuous? I would rather live in a world, and I've struggled with this question. I mean, I've swung in both directions trying to figure out what the answer is. And I've come to the conclusion it's better to, using children in public schools as an example, to educate our children with God's law within Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, as the foundation for education, than not. Yeah, when they graduate, we might have a generation of people who think they're Christian when they're not. But at least we have the tools to tell them that they're not. When Jesus would preach to the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes, he warned them. Do you say, but you guys are being inconsistent, you might as well just go be atheists? No. Jesus is just simply warning them that they're not being consistent, that they're acting against God's law, that they're not embracing God's law. Despite the fact that it was everywhere, they were actually subverting it and twisting it and suppressing it for their traditions. But as Jesus told his disciples, do as they say, not as they do. right? Your righteousness needs to exceed theirs. That's a hard saying. Okay. Jesus is bringing to bear upon the people of God the law of God so that they would see their need for him. So, yeah. Do we want to tell people they should exercise faith when they don't have it? Okay. But the truth is, we all know that God exists. And we all suppress that knowledge in one way or another. We all are idolaters, and we practice idolatry on some level and in some way. What we need to do is, as a society, is the best we can figure out a way to bring Christianity, to bring Christ, all of Christ for all of life. How do we bring Christ for all of life into all spheres, education, science, economics, your home, the state, it doesn't matter where, your workplace, right? How do we do that in such a way that we maintain a balance, that we're not forcing Christianity in the same way that I shouldn't force my children to become believers in a way that actually drives them away, right? So the separation of church and state argument has been one of those for 2,000 years. That's the debate, right? What's the balance? Well, the balance isn't to become secular and then keep the church over here in a corner somewhere. That's been a complete disaster. Complete failure. You don't have to look far to see that. When you get boys and girls confused as to if they're a boy and a girl, of what they actually are, that's a disaster. First world problem, I suppose. We need to think about these things. We need to, as Christians, at least be willing to discuss these things, to advance a society, to advance our Christianity in such a way that we have that balance as we go forward, so that when we pass a law, thou shalt not murder, it's not grounded in secularism. That when we as a society say, we should unashamedly as Christians say, thou shalt not murder, not because it's utilitarian, not because it's helpful, but because it's true. And it's true because we're made in the image of God. So we shouldn't believe in an esoteric version of Christianity, as Eric seems to be saying. We shouldn't believe in the cross because it's helpful. We shouldn't believe in these stories because they're helpful. We shouldn't believe in these mythologies because they're helpful. We should believe in them because they're true. Biblical stories. Right? We should believe in the cross because it's true. God, in the incarnation, has brought together heaven and earth. God, in the incarnation, has brought together God and sinners and reconcile them together. Why would we not want the world to live? Why would we not bring that message to the world so that the world can live? Right? John 3:17. Right? We have John 3:16. We love to say that, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever should believe in him not perish but have everlasting life. For God, verse 17, did not send his Son into the world to condemn it, but rather to save it. So we as Christians need to think about this. We need to think about how it affects our society, how to bring forth a message in the public sphere in such a way as that it can change the world around us. And yet we know that people are going to struggle with having a saving faith. Eric is just wrong if he thinks he can exercise faith, because his definition of faith is esoteric. The biblical saving faith is a gift of the Holy Spirit in the proclamation of the Word of God, in the proclamation of the good news of Jesus Christ. Jesus isn't esoteric, right? Jesus physically died on the cross. Jesus holds all things together. And so as a society, we need to look to him, both Christians and non-Christians, need to recognize that God's law and his gospel is the necessary requirement at the foundation for all things, whether we believe them or not. So that when Chris Williamson, what should we do with him? Encourage him to go to church. Encourage him to listen. Encourage him to understand what's happening around us. And just maybe, he'll see the truth of God and he'll believe. But you're not going to believe by sitting in the atheistic camp listening to atheism all day. How is that helpful? We don't tell the alcoholic, go sit in the bar all day, drink as much booze you can until you become sober. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. Instead, we should call the alcoholic out of the bar, but we shouldn't call him to nothing. We need to call him to something, whether he believes it or not, and then hopefully over time he'll actually believe it. And it will be the reason for his not being an alcoholic anymore. And so we need to call the sinner out of his sin and idolatry. But the Christian just can't say, well, come into secularism. Right? No. We call him into the faith of that's given to us by Jesus Christ. Now, if it takes time for him to believe in that, fine. But we need to be, as Christians, offering the substantive truth to the world around us. These guys don't have it, but they're discussing it. They're thinking about it. And we as Christians need to give them the answer because we have it. And we have it because God has spoken to us in Christ, in the Scriptures. And that's where we need to turn. Anyway, it's my quick theological thought for the day. So God bless. Be good.